Ozil again, blood. This brother, yeah, fam, he's on another level, blood. He is on another planet, fam. That's the definition of a world-class player, blood.
Like many fans of the game, I am a bit of a sucker for a controversial figure. A player, manager, pundit, or whatever you want to call it that splits opinions always keeps things interesting. I mean, as long as they haven't done anything heinous or criminal, it's all in the name of good entertainment, right? Which brings us to today's subject, Mesut Özil. Football is full of polarizing players, but over the past few years, few have been as polarizing both on and off the pitch as the German. Whether he's being slandered for being lazy in the transition or his political opinions, none can deny how insanely influential the man can be with the ball in play, or how outrageously charitable he is when it's not. You don't become a 5-time German Player of the Year award winner, nor get universally dubbed the assist king for nothing, after all. Seriously, I was feeling a bit off the other day, and the guy even helped me find the motivation to make this video. Legend. Today we're going to dive into the curious case of Mesut Özil. The rise, the quote-unquote fall, and the controversies along the way. With that being said, what happened to Mesut Özil? What's going on, everyone? Really hope you're all doing well. If you leave a like, that would really assist the channel. you get it? It's because Özil and assist. Anyway, let's get into it. Born in 1988 in West Germany, by the time Özil had picked up the sport, there was no doubt in anyone's mind that he would shine in the years to come. Working his way through several youth teams, he eventually found himself at Schalke in 2005 and turned pro a year later at 18 years old. If I were to ask you to describe German football in general, what words would come to mind? Efficient, systemic, relentless, hard-working? All common descriptors. There are of course more, but these are amongst those that we frequently associate with the immense force that is die Mannschaft. However, one that you've probably heard less frequently is flair, which makes sense. Flicks and tricks very rarely coincide with efficiency. However, when you're talking about Özil, this is not the case. With the ball at feet, the man possessed a soft touch, finesse, and most significantly, out-of-this-world vision, which is probably only partially an exaggeration, as I wouldn't be surprised if he could thread the needle on the moon. Having said that, his defensive work rates and physicality were being called into question from a fairly young age, but all things were pointing towards incremental improvements. In any case, taking all that into consideration, perhaps there was a reason for his mix of abilities. He is a man of more than one nation, after all, part German, part Turkish. In the words of the man himself, my technique and feeling for the ball is the Turkish side to my game. The discipline, attitude, and always give your all is the German part. A neat little detail, but remember it for later on because it'll definitely come up again. Back to Schalke, and the man was doing well enough to attract the attention of quite a few suitors. And when a dispute over an increase in wages in his new contract caused a rift in his relationship with Schalke, he was essentially free to leave. 5 million euros later, and Werder Bremen were up next as of January 2008, where he continued his meteoric rise. And over the next 2.5 years, he managed to take on the role as the main playmaker for Bremen, scoring 16 goals and making 54 assists in 108 games across all competitions. Add on a DFB Pokal and a UEFA Cup runner-up medal, and he was making big headlines. And even though averaging an assist every other game at 21 in a major European league was eye-opening to many, his performances in the 2010 World Cup is what truly introduced him to the world. Now, anything other than first place is a disappointment for Germany when it comes to international competitions, and despite getting to the semi-finals of this World Cup, this was no exception. But as far as Özil was concerned, this quote-unquote failure of a tournament was a massive personal success. 3 assists, the joint highest in the tournament, and 1 goal in 7 games. And just like that, the floodgates had opened. Everyone and their dog was after this man's signature. Wayne Rooney apparently even begged Sir Alex Ferguson to scoop him up. Barcelona, Arsenal, all the big guns were in the race. But as is usually the case, when a certain club comes knocking, it's pretty much a wrap for all the other interested parties. When the offer comes in to join Real Madrid, there is no decision to make, let's be honest. You don't refuse this club. I was in no rush to leave Werder Bremen, but this is one club you say yes to. 15 million euros later, and he was a member of Mourinho's Madrid. An interesting tidbit is that he was brought in to replace Kaká, a former Ballon d'Or winner and absolute baller. However, Kaká's knees were essentially slowly turning into jelly at this point, so Özil got his chance to shine pretty early on. And in line with how things had gone for him up to this point, he was an instant hit. So much so that in his first 2 starts at the Bernabeu in the league, he left the pitch to standing ovations. By the end of his first year at the Bernabeu, he put to bed any notion that he would struggle in the big leagues, as he ended his first season at Madrid with 18 assists in the league, more than anyone else bar Messi. But this was only the beginning. I say this because he managed to achieve this feat 2 more times over the next 2 years, most assists in the league back to back to back. The assist king was nothing to play around with. Add a starring role in Madrid's league win in La Liga de los Records to the mix, and it's no surprise that he went on to win his first German Player of the Year award in 2011, an award that he would go on to win another 4 times over the next 5 years. Life in Madrid was going swimmingly for our guy at that point. So much so that he even said, "I'd like to end my career at Real Madrid. I know what I'm capable of, and I'm convinced I'll stay at Real Madrid many years." Man, I really do hate reading quotes like this, knowing things absolutely do not work out that way. He said this in 2012, and literally 1 year after that, the man's bags were already packed. He had a good 2012-13 season, the record needs to show that. Like I previously noted, most assists in La Liga again. But unfortunately, the powers that be and Özil himself were at a bit of a crossroads by the end of the year. Luka Modric had been brought in at the beginning of the season, offering competition, another player adept at the number 10 role. Now, Özil publicly stated that this was not an issue and he would continue to fight for his place. However, as the season went on, he began to feel as though the higher-ups at the Bernabeu did not believe in him as much as he thought they should. And if rumors of Madrid's pursuit of Gareth Bale, the world's new phenomenon, proved to be true, someone in that Madrid attack would need to be sacrificed. And unfortunately for Özil, he was deemed to be the weakest link. For this reason, and more that we unfortunately are unlikely to ever be privy to, he decided that his time in Madrid was up. Arsenal was the way forward. Cristiano Ronaldo, as well as very many fans, were not happy about this move. Not one bit. And Ronaldo had every right to be frustrated. He also reflected the emotions of much of the footballing world. Anger on the behalf of the Real Madrid fans, confusion on the part of everyone else. The following is more or less what was going through the head of the casual fan at this point. Madrid are getting rid of the best playmaker in Europe? That's an L. Why have they done that? Arsenal are breaking their transfer record? I thought they were pinching pennies. This is a strange news day, man. The entire situation was a confusing affair. However, in the end, the operation actually worked out well for just about everyone involved. Madrid won La Decima a year later, and Özil became an instant hit at the Emirates, helping them win their first piece of major silverware since they last won the same trophy back in 2005, the FA Cup. And in the years that followed, he only continued with his helpful demeanor. He helped the Gunners to a further 2 FA Cups. By 2018, he had become the fastest player to reach 50 assists in the Premier League, doing it in 141 games. He mesmerized the world with his crazy bounce kick technique thingy. He scored an absolute belter in Europe. Dude was going nuts, and Arsenal were in love. In the middle of all of this, he went off to Brazil for the 2014 World Cup, and we all know how that one turned out. Again, my man shone bright. Although, rather disturbingly, he was not only on the pitch during a literal homicide, he even took part in it. Shocking. For the 4th time, Germany were world champions and Özil was a standout. Fast forward a couple years and taking things back to the Emirates, by January 2018, Arsenal made Özil the highest paid player in their history, reportedly $350k per week running up to 2021. To put that into perspective, before signing this deal, alongside Alexis Sanchez, Özil was already the highest paid player at the club, earning about 140k. And I know what you're thinking. Finally, my guy was earning a livable wage. I was thinking the same. Great minds, you know, great minds. In any case, despite everything noted in this video thus far, 2018 marked the year where everything essentially began to fall apart. Let's start things off with Özil vs Germany. First things first, 2018 was a World Cup year, the time of year where a player's patriotism and national allegiance comes under a microscope. In mid-2018, mere weeks before the World Cup, Özil alongside İlkay Gündoğan, both players with Turkish ancestry, were pictured posing with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and handing him signed shirts. Many felt that this signified the German international support of Erdogan, who is a highly controversial figure, to say the least. It goes without saying that many in Germany were not happy at this in the slightest and began to question where Özil's allegiances lied. When Germany crashed out of the World Cup at the group stages, despite Özil having a relatively decent World Cup when playing, many were quick to use these images and what they signified as a means for critiquing Özil's performances. The backlash of it all was so bad that Özil quit the national team altogether shortly after the World Cup, citing racism and disrespect from high-ranking German Football Association members on a regular basis as the reasoning for this. And so, at 29 years old, he departed from Die Mannschaft. Next up, Özil vs Arsenal. Back in England, and things weren't much better. He had been criticized for bad form in the past, but this time, things were different. The extension of Özil's contract was one of Wenger's last dealings as manager, doing it mere months before his Arsenal departure. Unai Emery came in next, and Özil was seemingly not in his plans as injuries and a dip in form did little to help the German. As the 18-19 season progressed, his game time began to plummet and the two began to clash more and more. And I remember this quite well because it seemed as though instances of their frustration with one another were being leaked almost every day at the time. By this point, Özil's departure from the club was slowly becoming a matter of when and not if. Fast forward to midway through lockdown and things got even worse when he refused to take a voluntary pay cut during the pandemic to assist with the club's financials. Now, things were so bad at the time that it was even reported that amidst the craziness, Arsenal were forced to make 55 members of their staff redundant. So why was Mesut Özil not willing to take a small hit? To quote the man himself from an interview with The Athletic, the reasoning for this decision was as follows. I would have been okay to take a bigger share and then a cut if required, but we were rushed into it without proper consultation. For anyone in this situation, you have a right to know everything to understand why it is happening and where the money is going. But we didn't get enough details. We just had to give a decision, which, if true, does make sense. Now, he was reportedly being asked to give up about £42,000 per week, and while that is a pretty small sum when taking his full pay package into consideration, it's still a very large amount of money. And before you come at me for defending Özil, I'm only saying this because when you factor in that Arsenal went on to spend roughly £78 million in transfers within a month of this story coming out, and that Arsenal's billionaire owner Stan Kroenke famously has not put an impressive amount of money into the club since buying it, perhaps his skepticism was justified. Further to that, Özil is quite publicly one of the most charitable footballers out there, routinely donating very, very large sums of his own money to those in need, certainly much more than he was being asked to give up. For that reason, I find it hard to believe that he would outright refuse to take a pay cut had he been aware that this would help in paying the salary of a member of staff, for example. But again, this is all speculation on what's been reported. We obviously can't speak on what anyone's true intentions were in the whole saga. Moving along, to end the Özil versus series, Mesut Özil vs China. And I know I'm gonna sound like a bit of a broken record at this point, but after this one, things got even worse. Something I haven't mentioned is that, along with being of Turkish descent, Özil is a practicing and devout Muslim. Going back to the end of 2019, he condemned the treatment of Uyghur Muslims who had been placed in camps in Xinjiang, an act which led to Arsenal games being blocked in China. Adding on to that, he received little backing from Arsenal as they publicly distanced themselves from Özil's comments, stating that they will, quote, always adhere to the principles of not involving themselves in politics. Now, following that, Arsenal, along with every other EPL team, rallied together in support of the Black Lives Matter movement, and even more recently, we've seen support from them for the struggles in Ukraine. I would like to note that all of these are causes that should absolutely be supported. There's no whataboutery going on here, I'm just trying to give a bit of context. From Arsenal's perspective, I guess you could understand why they would want to distance themselves from controversy. I mean, unfortunately, it is what it is. They just acted the same way that 99.99% of other companies in the world would have acted in this situation. But from Özil's perspective, you can also understand how he probably felt like he'd been thrown under the bus somewhat. and for that exact reason, in mid-2020, he publicly voiced his disappointment in not being supported by his club. Now, I did briefly mention it earlier on, but it's definitely worth saying once more that towards the back end of the 2019-20 season, Özil had been underperforming for a good year or two, was reportedly suffering from a back-related injury, and had gotten entangled in a few heated disagreements with Arteta. All of these factors undoubtedly contributed towards his absence from the squad. However, come the beginning of the 2021-22 season, he wasn't even registered in the squad list for any of Arsenal's major competitions. Now, there are obviously several reasons that can be pointed to for why this was all happening, as I've just noted, but many point towards the comments on China as the main catalyst. We can't know the exact reasoning for sure, so again, all we can do is speculate. So basically, I'd like to again remind everyone that the highest paid player in Arsenal history at the time was not even registered for the season. That's how dire the situation got. Eventually, something had to be done, and a move to Fenerbahce was the ultimate result. His contract with Arsenal was terminated, thus allowing him to join the Turkish club as a free agent. This was undoubtedly the best outcome for everyone involved. Arsenal got rid of a 350k per week player that wasn't even being given the opportunity to warm the bench. Özil got to finally play first-team football again, and even further, for one of the clubs that he reportedly supported as a child. And Fenerbahce got a fantastic player, which is always nice, I guess. And despite one or two negative headlines, it seems he's doing alright and has even captained the squad from time to time. Mesut Özil's journey over the past decade and a bit has undoubtedly been one of the most unique and one of the most controversial ones out there. Praised 1 second, frozen out the next. Sometimes justified, sometimes not, depending on who you ask. Of course, there is more to all of this than what I've noted in this video, and I've tried quite hard to only talk about events that have been publicly reported to remain as unbiased as possible. However, I really would like to engage with all of you guys in the comments on your thoughts on this. What do you think of Özil's journey, actions, and treatment? Was he right? Was he wrong? Let me know. Anyway, that's all from me. Really hope you all enjoyed. Cheers, and I'll catch you in the next one.